Hi, I'm Doug Young here for Acoustic Guitar Magazine, and today we're going to take a look at alternate tunings. Just a really simple introduction to get you started. These are going to be a few examples to go along with an article that I just wrote for the magazine called Opening Up, where we show you how to get started. And let's talk about what you need to get started. We'll talk about why you want to get started, and then I'll show you a few ideas just to get you started exploring a few different tunings. First of all, you can use any guitar you like. Some people get very picky about this and like certain guitars better for open tunings or alternate tunings, but really whatever you got, just get started with that. Whatever strings you've got, get started with that. One thing that is really handy to have is a tuner, and there's all kinds of these out there. Make sure it's a chromatic tuner, one that can tune to any note. There's a very small number of tuners out there that are still just DADGAD, intended only for standard tuning. Those aren't going to help you, but anything that can tune to any note is going to be very handy. I use this little 2C electronic tuner, but there's lots of them out there, and I'm just going to clip that on the guitar. You can use your ear to retune, but the tuner helps your ear. It expands and double checks your ear for you as you're changing strings. So why do we want to use an alternate tuning? There's lots of reasons, main one being just to get different sounds. Not only can you, in some cases, play things in alternate tunings that you can't play in standard tuning, certain chord voicing, certain notes that are not available, but also just the fact that the chords are different, you get a different voicing, and it creates a different tonality, different sonority, which can just be fun and be an inspiration as you're playing around. So let's get started. We're just going to show you how to ease into it and start exploring alternate tunings. I'm in standard tuning right now, and I'm going to go to what's called drop D, which is so called because we're going to drop the 6th string down to D. Just a whole step, 2 frets, and you can check it against the 4th string. So you got a 4th string D. Check the harmonic at the 12th fret. It should be exactly the same note as the 4th string, open. And what does this give us? Well, in standard tuning, the lowest D bass is the 4th string. And so when we play a D chord, that's kind of what it sounds like, which is perfectly fine. Nice D chord. It's always been one of my favorite chords. With drop D, we have this low D bass note. And that gives us this huge D chord. So right off the bat, there's something that you can't get in standard tuning. Now, what happens to the other things, other chords that you know? Well, some of them are just fine. For example, in the key of D, we've got D, and we've got A or A7th. And you normally wouldn't play the bass string for that even in standard tuning, so it stays the same. But what about G? Well, you've got a G chord in standard tuning. One way to play it would be like this, in the first position, and that's not going to work. Not going to sound good because this is no longer a G, this is an F because we lowered the string down 2 frets. So we have to adjust. We have to move that note up here somehow. Well, we can't really just, move our hands without changing things. We've got to rearrange our fingering a little bit. So the way I would do this is to say, well, I've got to finger this. I'm going to want that G up here on top. And this note down here on the 5th string, I'm just going to eliminate it. But the way I'm playing here, I'm going to be deadening the 5th string anyway. So I get a G chord. So now we've got our 1, 4, 5, and 1. Now there's other ways you could play a G, but it always comes down to the same thing with a tuning like this. You just have to figure out where to compensate for the fact that you tuned the string down. So let's say you wanted to play a G bar chord in standard tuning. Well, the same thing. This is all fine. By the way, in case it wasn't obvious, in drop D, the top 5 strings are exactly the same as standard. So everything you know is still there, just with the addition of that D string. I can still play scales, C scale, and so on. It's all there. And my bar chords are there, except that I can't play the 6th string. So here's this G bar chord. What do I want to do? I've got to move this note up to here. So I got a couple choices. I could just move my 3rd finger over there, and again, damping the 5th string. Now I've got a G bar chord. Another approach would be, in standard tuning, sometimes you might play a G like this with your thumb over. And now, instead of that, I just need to move up here. I'll just rearrange my fingers a little bit and play it like this. And that's actually a nice form. because it's movable, and it's pretty easy. So I've got G, F, E, and so on, all by just adjusting that one finger. Now, the other thing we get out of just making this one simple change of drop D is that we have octaves here. Great for alternating bass. And we've got a fifth on the a fifth of D on the fifth string. But we can just create a nice D drone there. And now that supports playing all over the neck. You can play melodies up high, you can play chord shapes up high, and you've still got the support of that low bass string. So drop D is a fabulous tuning, a large part because you still know everything you know about the top 5 strings. It's easy to compensate for that lowered fifth string, but you get this nice low D that sounds great on most guitars, and get a few additional sounds that you otherwise wouldn't get in standard tuning. So let's take a look at another tuning. We're going to take a look at Open G. Open G fits into the class of tunings called open tunings. Alternate tunings, people use these words in all kinds of ways, but technically an alternate tuning is just one that isn't standard tuning. So there's lots of alternate tunings. An open tuning generally refers to a tuning that forms a major chord or a minor chord when you strum all the strings. So Open G is an open tuning in that when we get into Open G, we're going to be able to strum the strings, get a G chord, just like that, no fingers. It's going to be great. So how do we do that? Well, I'm in drop D now, so I've already lowered my 6th string down to D. I'm going to lower the 1st string down to D. And then the 5th string down to G. And again, I can check my top D string against the 4th string. I can check my 5th string against the 3rd string. And I can also check my handy tuner here to see if I'm still in tune. What do we get? Like I said, when we strum across this, we get a big, huge G chord without even having to fret anything. Now, magically, because we've got open strings forming a chord, we've got our 1, 4, and 5 chords. 1, sounds great. But we also have a lot of other things going on. A lot of interesting shapes and sounds can be found in Open G. Of course, you've got the Open G note. Instead of having to fret a G like you would in standard tuning, we've always got this G. We've got a D on the 5th of G on the 4th string and the 6th string. Sort of an alternating bass that can be handy. If we were to put our fingers on an A minor shape, what would be an A minor 7th shape in standard tuning, just 2 fingers, 1st position, we get a really cool sounding chord. And what is that? Well, first of all, these 3 strings are the same as in standard tuning. So if I just played that, we'd probably say that was an A minor with 7th without a root, or maybe it's the top half of a C chord. But here we've got sort of the top half of a C chord. It's actually a C inversion, C, G, E over G. So it's a C over G chord. If we slide that up, we get a kind of a dissonant chord. But that sound right there has been used in all kinds of pop tunes. Now again, if you want to start trying to find chords in this tuning, we've now changed 3 strings. So it's the same process as we looked at in drop D, in that you can compensate for the strings that you've lowered, but it's going to take a little more time because you've changed 3 strings. But let's take a look. For example, let's say I really wanted to play an A minor 7th chord. I'll fret the A minor 7th the way I did. We've already seen that it's a different sound. In fact, now in this tuning, it's a C over G. But I want an A minor 7th. Well, what do? The top string used to be an E, now it's a D, so I'm going to have to go up 1. And this is a G, but I want an A in the bass, so I have to go up 1 there too. And there's an A minor 7th chord, sounding exactly the way that it sounds in standard tuning. Let's take a look at one more tuning. Let's look at a tuning that's representative of a type of tuning called a sus tuning. And these are tunings that don't form open chords. They form a suspended chord. And the most common example, very popular tuning, is called DADGAD. I'm back in standard tuning. To get from standard tuning to DADGAD, we're going to tune the 6th string down to D, just like we did with drop D. Then we're going to tune the 1st string down to D, an octave above the 4th string. And then we're going to drop the 2nd string down to A, an octave above the 5th string. And then I'm going to check my handy tuner and just make sure that I'm really in tune. One thing you'll notice when you do these, start changing strings, is that all the tension changes and all the strings may go a little out of tune. So it's always useful to retune everything. Just touch it up, it won't be a big change. And now we're in tune. Now we've got DADGAD. Now, DADGAD and sus tuning sometimes puzzle people because just like open G, we saw how beautiful it sounded when we strummed all the strings. When I strum DADGAD, I don't know, that's not as nice a sound. It's kind of a weird sound. It's kind of unsettled. That's because what we've got is D's and A's and a G. It's the root and 5th in the key of D and a 4th. So it's a suspended 4th chord. And you might say, well, how is that useful? Well, we can put our fingers in different places and make it useful. The easiest thing we can do, one of the cool things about DADGAD, is that with one finger on the 3rd string, 2nd fret, I have a D power chord. Now it sounds a little more normal. That could be your D chord. If I move that one finger over to the 5th string, 2nd fret, that is a type of a G chord. So I'm going to say that that's my G chord in the key of D. If I move my 1st finger to the 2nd fret 4th string, that's an A 7th chord. So I've got my 1, 4, 5 with one finger. And that's pretty cool. So that'll get you started playing around with DADGAD, and you can just find other notes that you like while playing those. Another cool thing about DADGAD that makes it easy to get started with is that the notes open, 2nd, and 4th fret all across the neck. Are the notes out of the D major scale. Now you notice it didn't quite sound like a scale because we jumped a little bit. There's a couple notes that are repeated, there's one note that's missing, but think of it as a palette of notes from the D major scale, and they're all there without any, hard to memorize pattern. Just open, 2nd, 4th across the neck. We can play melodies. Joy to the World, in case you don't know, Christmas song. Nothing but open strings, 2nd fret and 4th fret. Now we can also, because we've got these D's, we've got this nice drone, we can easily add accompaniment to that. Very easy to get started. Now, whatever the tuning is, one of the things to do is just have some fun with it. And you can just put your fingers down in places, noodle around, and see what comes out. And one thing to remember is that you do have to explore a little bit, and maybe the things that your first impression says don't sound good, they can be made to sound good. Let's take an example. Let's say I play, I'm just going to put my fingers here. First finger on the 2nd fret 4th string and the 4th fret of the 5th string. And let's strum that. Well, that sounds perfectly awful. However, what if I fingerpick that? Now it sounds kind of cool, a little mysterious. And if that's just part of a chord progression, like let's say I slide my fingers up to the 4th fret 4th string, 5th fret 5th string. Another sound that drum doesn't sound so good. But that's kind of nice. So now I can do something like... And it's kind of the sound of DADGAD. It's a little bit dissonant. You've got a lot of notes ringing against each other, but it gives you a lot of different types of sounds. That was just playing around on open second and fourth strings. So have a lot of fun with DADGAD that way. Another thing to try as you're starting to explore alternate tunings is pick one of the tunings. It could be drop D, open G, DADGAD, or any of the other hundreds of tunings there are that you might find interesting, and try to work out a song in that tuning. That'll avoid any tendency to sort of noodle endlessly and just create cool sounds. It'll force you to have some focus and a direction. You can look up a chord chart online, open up a book that you might have. It could be a pop tune, it could be a folk song, whatever you'd like, and figure out where to find the chords for that song. And it might take you a bit of work. You can definitely rely on online chord charts and so on to find chords, and you may have to hunt and peck a little bit to find a melody, but picking that out will help you learn the tuning, and you'll discover things about the tuning that maybe give the arrangement a unique sound, but also at the same time give you some direction and have it be a recognizable song. I'll play you just a little folk song that I've arranged in DADGAD tuning. This doesn't quite stick to the shapes we've seen so far, but it's an example of what you could do. This is The Water is Wide. Hope you have fun exploring alternate tunings.